It has been a while since I've done a video discussing the Sense Energy Monitor, and so recently I actually got a question posted on my last video about the Sense Energy Monitor asking, has anything been updated? So I'm going to talk about that and a little bit more coming up. What's going on, fellow engineers? Thank you for checking out this video. If this is your first time to the channel and you're interested in learning about technology or how to do DIY items, then please be sure to click subscribe by clicking the subscribe button down below. So last time I did a Sense Energy video or Energy Monitor video was about after having it installed and running for 3 months. At this point, it is now around month 10 that I've had it installed, and so wanted to give updates on it. Also, thanks to Corey, who asked the question if I was still using it and whether the devices that I last reported that were undetected have been detected. Needless to say, they have not. And I think it has something to do with the power strip or surge protector or UPS that I have a lot of my devices plugged into. So my televisions, most of them, actually all of them, are plugged into a power strip. Some of them, one of them is actually plugged into a UPS. And so I'm thinking because Sense cannot pick up the signature through that UPS or power strip, that is not able to identify that device or anything that's plugged into that device. Also, the same thing goes with like computers. I have a couple computers. One of them is plugged into a UPS. The other one is plugged into a power strip. It can't identify those, or it hasn't identified those. Is it possible that it can identify those if I don't plug them into a power strip? Yes. Am I really interested in trying that? Not necessarily. And so, but I may give it a go just to see what might happen. I may try like one TV not being plugged into a power strip and see if it's able to detect it that way. So that's the rationale that I think may be going on with that. You know, I have various different TVs. I don't watch them a lot, but when I do watch them, you know, they are, you know, pretty much on for several hours. And you would think after some time that it would eventually figure those out, but it hasn't. So that's the kind of, I guess, sucky part about it. Also, so the winter has passed, and one problem that I had during the winter was that the heating element in the heating igniter in the furnace that I have was being confused by the refrigerator bulb. And so Sense identified the refrigerator bulb first, mostly because it's used year round. Every time you open the refrigerator, the bulb kicks on. Whereas the heat, it didn't kick on. I think I didn't start using it to maybe like November or so. So from July to November, it was able to identify the bulb in the refrigerator, but it didn't start identifying the heat until I actually started using it. Once it did is identify the heating element and the components of the heating system, for the most part, it identified the fan, the exhaust fan for the heating system, and then it confused the igniter for the heating system with the refrigerator bulb. I have gas heat, and I have a few reasons about why it confused the two. First off, it's because, well, my heating system and my refrigerator share the same wall. They're not directly behind each other. Like one is here and then the other one's a little bit further down the wall. So, but they share the same wall. And so one theory that I had is, well, because they share the same wall, the electrical lines that run to both devices are pretty close to each other. So maybe they're picking up or running interference because they're close proximity to each other. And so Sense is having, you know, it's hearing it on one line, but it's thinking it's something else, you know, something like that nature. The next reason that I think there may be some confusion is because the igniter for a gas furnace is similar to the architecture of a incandescent light bulb. And so in my refrigerator, I have incandescent light bulbs. It is an older refrigerator, so it doesn't have like the LEDs in there like you would get in a brand new refrigerator today. And so I'm thinking that may be part of the problem. And then the third reason that I'm thinking may be part of the problem is that the heating element runs for about 10 to 15 seconds when it is heating up. Most people, when they go in the refrigerator, they kind of know what they want. And so they open the door, look around maybe, or just go open the door, grab what they want, close it back. That's roughly 10 to 15 seconds. And so I'm thinking because of the timing of how long each device is on, it may be confusing, like, hey, it was only on for 15 seconds. That's got to be the refrigerator light, which is not the case. I did report this to Sense, and I actually reported to them twice. The first time they made an adjustment, but it was still figuring out that the heating was still the refrigerator. So I reported to them again. And so on the second time, they actually just wiped the configuration for the heating igniter as well as the configuration for the refrigerator bulb out of the system and said let it relearn and see what happens. I did let it relearn, and it kind of pretty much picked up the same behavior, so I was like, okay, I'm not gonna worry about it. What I did notice though is that the way that the heat turns on, there's a pattern that can be identified when the heat turns on. And so if I'm looking at like my timeline or my usage history, I can see that pattern that looks like this. And basically point 1 is where the exhaust fan turns on the heating unit. And so that is to remove any existing gas that's sitting in the system outside. And so then after that, point number 2 is where the heating igniter turns on, and it just basically glows. And then point 3 is after that heating igniter has ignited the gas, the igniter turns back off, lets the heating elements, burn for a little bit to get the system up to temperature. And then point number 4 is where the fan kicks on and blows the heat into the home. And so I had to correlate that pattern with when it said the refrigerator light was on to actually make a determination when the heat was really on versus the refrigerator light. And then also being able to do some analysis, I realized I'm not up at 2:30 or 3:30 in the morning, and it's saying that the refrigerator light was on at 2:30 and 3:30 in the morning. Well, that was actually the heat kicking on in the middle of the night. Yeah, not the most greatest of experiences with that particular part of the system, but I reported it, they made adjustments, and it seems like it didn't really help. I may report it again once the temperature, goes cooler again to see if they can do something different. Maybe they've gotten a different algorithm. All right, so the next thing is the feature of the network detection. And so Sense has an option in its settings that it allows you you give permission for Sense to analyze the devices on your network to determine and to learn those devices when they are on based upon their network connectivity. The problem that I am having is that pretty much all of my network devices, so computers, I have a smart TV, so that smart TV, HD home run, all of those items are plugged into power strips, surge protectors, or UPS. And so I'm thinking as I mentioned earlier about the not being able to identify all the devices, I'm thinking that is impacting this particular functionality of the Sense Energy Monitor. So needless to say, if you want that network feature, I think you have to plug everything directly into the wall, which is kind of unfortunate because I have like my TVs and all the accessories are plugged into a power strip, and when I want to watch TV, I turn that power strip on, and when I'm done watching it, I turn it off to save electricity. That way I'm not having vampire devices or devices running in standby mode. All right, the next thing that I've noticed in the last several months is that there are no homes in my area that also have the Sense Energy Monitor. If there are some, there are not enough. And I noticed this by going into my Sense app or on the web, and you look at homes that are in, there's a section in there that shows you homes that are in your area. And so what it does is when you put your information in, it compares other Sense users that have the same zip code as you and compares your usage to their usage. Well, the only thing I found out is that at least 15 people have to be in the same zip code that you are in to have a comparison of other users in your area. So it's kind of discouraging that there aren't 15 other people that have the same energy monitor. So because of the proximity of where I am to the next zip code, literally I'm probably like less than probably three quarters to a mile from the next zip code. What I'm thinking about doing is changing my zip code over to that next one to see if I will get some data in that particular section of the app. Kind of helpful to see how I'm using electricity compared to other people. Compared to a lot of the users in the state, I've always been in that very first section because there's like a very lower, right in the median with everybody else, and then above everybody else. And so mine has always been in that lower. And again, I live, I'm by myself. And so I'm thinking majority of the people that are probably using this probably have 2, maybe 3 people, if not more, in their homes. So theirs will probably be a little bit further up. So while doing research for this video, I actually compared what Sense reported for my monthly usage to what my power company had as my monthly usage, and I noticed that the numbers were slightly off. Now, I don't know if this has to do with the billing cycle of the power company or not, and I may actually go back and double check when the power company is actually cutting off the billing cycle, because right now I have it set at the date that the power company sends the bill, but looking at the numbers, it looks like they actually do things slightly different. So that is something I've noticed, that the numbers is probably between 5 and 15 kilowatts off from what the power company is reporting. Again, I'm gonna just go change that to make sure that better aligns with that. So hopefully there's no real issue in that. All right, so I've also added some additional devices, or really actually added one device, which was a robot vacuum. And so with the addition of that device, even though it's not running all of the time, it is drawing power all of the time. And so as a result, that device has now increased my always on usage up to about maybe 160 watts, whereas before it was roughly probably about 120 to 140. And you'll notice that if you go into the app, the always on usage is based upon, if I'm not mistaken, the last 48 hours of the usage that you've had. And so because of that, it's consistently in that 160 range now. One thing that I am considering doing is to put that and maybe a couple of other devices on smart switches. So like a Wemo, I have several of them already for like the TVs and so forth. But to put those on put that on that device and have maybe an automation or something that will charge it for maybe 7 hours, 5 to 7 hours each day, and then shut it off. And maybe I'll see a little bit of energy savings in that. Also, you know, some other devices that I may have, I probably need to go ahead and put those on smart switches as well, and then connect them to either Home Assistant or just a Wemo app and be able to switch things off a little bit more proactively than I have been doing. All right, and the final thing that I have noticed in this 10-month expedition, if you will, is that the light fixtures that I have LED bulbs in, I have not been identified. And so late last year, after having Sense for maybe 4 or 5 months, I converted a lot of the ceiling fans that had incandescent light bulbs over to LED. The light fixtures that I could put CFLs in or already had CFLs in, they remain CFLs because those are, you know, still energy conserving compared to an incandescent. And at this point, I did not see the cost or I could not personally justify replacing a CFL with a LED, you know, because they're similar in usage in terms of how much wattage they draw. You know, some of the LEDs, like ceiling fans, I have maybe 3 to 4 bulbs in each ceiling fan. I think some ceiling fans I have, one of them may actually have 5 in it, but for the most part 3 to 4 bulbs, and all of those are LEDs. And when you switch that ceiling fan on, it essentially draws about or a little bit over the same amount as a CFL, one CFL. It just didn't make sense to, hey, we're just gonna put in CFL, we'll put LEDs in for the CFLs. Again, those did not identify, and I don't know if it's because of the current draw is not strong enough or what the case may be. The light fixtures that do have CFLs in it and the 2 remaining fixtures that I have, the 3 remaining fixtures that I have that have incandescents in them, it has been able to identify those successfully with no problem. But again, LEDs, it doesn't identify. It does register that those LED fixtures are on, so no concern there, but it doesn't identify what it is. All right, so that wraps up this video. In maybe the next couple of months, I will hit the 12-month or 1-year mark for using the Sense Energy Monitor, and so I'll probably do another review video around or after that time frame to kind of give you a full, more yearly details of what has worked, what hasn't worked, problems like I've discussed here in this video, and maybe even go through some of the usage data that Sense is providing to me. So if you have any questions about anything I've discussed with the Sense Energy Monitor, drop those down below. If you have any issues with your Sense Energy Monitor, feel free to reach out to Sense. But you can also reach out to me and ask me, you know, if I've encountered any issues and what I have had to do to fix those issues. Last but not least, please be sure to subscribe. That way you get notified, and also get a thumbs up to this video if this information has been useful. That way YouTube knows this video is helpful, and I also know that this video is helpful to the people like you who choose to watch. So until next time, peace out.